Ever imagine, like, growing up on Mars, not just visiting, but being raised by aliens with totally different ways of thinking and being?
And then you suddenly land on Earth as an adult.
Talk about culture shock, right?
That's the wild premise we're diving into today with Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land.
It's a classic for a reason, and we're going deep into the excerpts to see what they tell us about humanity from an outsider's perspective.
It's fascinating how Heinlein uses this alien as outsider idea to hold up a mirror to ourselves.
Oh, totally.
We meet Valentine Michael Smith, who's basically adopted by Martians after his parents' mission to Mars goes wrong.
So he's like a Martian in every way but biology.
Exactly. And he comes to Earth as this blank slate. No earthly customs, no preconceived notions about how things work.
I can't even begin to imagine the sensory overload. It'd be like, I don't know, being a baby again, learning to process the world, but as a grown man.
The excerpts do a great job of describing his initial experiences.
Like, he probably doesn't get our humor, our social cues.
Everything's completely foreign.
Even something as simple as furniture would probably throw him off.
And this is where Heinlein introduces grokking, which is, well, it's so much more than just understanding something.
Oh, I've heard that term thrown around, but I'm not sure I fully get it.
Think of it as this deep, empathic way of experiencing the world. Like, imagine knowing not just what someone's saying, but feeling their emotions, their very being,
Yeah.
as if it were your own.
Okay, so less about words, more about this profound connection.
Exactly. And the excerpts illustrate this beautifully through Smith's early attempts at communication. There's this scene where he's told to climb out of bed.
Yeah.
He's completely baffled. The concept of a bed is totally alien to him. He doesn't sleep on a raised platform. He doesn't have that frame of reference.
Wow, I never thought about it like that.
It makes you realize how much we take for granted, just in our everyday language. And then there's his reaction to death.
How does that work in a Martian worldview?
It's seen as a natural transition, not something to fear or grieve.
Wow.
It shows how much our upbringing, our culture, shapes our understanding of even these really fundamental human experiences.
Okay, so we've got this Martian raised with completely different customs, a totally different way of seeing the world. Then he lands on Earth. What happens next?
Well, that's where the real cultural clash begins.
Right. He's going to encounter all sorts of people, all kinds of reactions.
Exactly. And Heinlein populates the book with this fascinating cast of characters, each representing different aspects of humanity.
Give us some examples.
You've got Ben Caxton, the opportunistic journalist, who's immediately thinking about how to exploit Smith's story for fame and fortune.
Ah, so he's our resident cynic.
Pretty much. But then you have someone like Jill Bortman. She's a nurse who approaches Smith with genuine compassion.
So she's the heart of the story.
You could say that. She becomes this crucial guide as he navigates this strange new world.
That contrast is so interesting, though.
It's Heinlein's way of showcasing the spectrum of human nature, right?
The good, the bad, and everything in between.
Exactly.
And I guess it makes you think, how do we each respond to the unfamiliar, to something radically different? Do we approach it with curiosity, with empathy, like Jill? Or do we let fear and self-interest guide our actions, like some of the other characters we'll meet?
That's a question that runs through the entire book. And Heinlein doesn't shy away from showing us the darker side of that response.
Like, how so?
Well, think about the government's attempts to control Smith, the way some religious groups try to twist his words for their own agendas. It exposes this very human tendency to fear what we don't understand, and the lengths some will go to maintain control.
It's almost as if Smith's very existence, his way of being, challenges their established worldview, and they just don't know how to handle that.
It's really about challenging those worldviews that this concept of thou art God comes into play.
Yeah, that's a big one. Right from the excerpts, it's not like traditional religion, is it?
Not at all. For Martians, it's about this inherent power they recognize in themselves, this deep connection to everything around them, to the universe.
So they see this divine spark in everyone and everything. That's pretty radical when you think about how we're used to thinking here on Earth.
Exactly. It challenges our ideas about individuality, about morality, even about the nature of God itself. And what's fascinating is how this plays out when Smith tries to interact with Earthlings.
Because he really believes this isn't just a Martian thing for him, right?
He genuinely believes that everyone has this potential, and he tries to awaken that understanding in them.
Which I imagine leads to some interesting conversations.
To say the least, it's like he's speaking a different language even when he's using English words. The excerpts describe these early attempts to explain grokking and thou art God, And it's clear most people just aren't ready for it.
They can't quite wrap their heads around it.
Exactly. And that's where the nest comes in, this community that forms around Smith. It becomes a space where people can explore these radical ideas without judgment or fear.
So kind of a safe haven for those who resonate with Smith's message.
In a way. But it's important to note that Heinlein doesn't present it as some utopian paradise. There's still conflict, misunderstanding, even betrayal within the group.
Because ultimately they're still human rights. Trying to navigate this new way of thinking and being, that's gotta come with challenges.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so believable, so relatable. But even with those challenges, we see characters like Ben Caxton who start to question their own beliefs.
Ben Caxton, our resident cynic. What's his journey like?
It's actually one of the most compelling in the book.
Yeah.
He represents that skeptical part of ourselves drawn to the sensational.
Right. He's initially all about the fame, the fortune, the exotic angle of Smith's story.
Exactly. But as he spends more time with Smith, with the people of the nest, he's forced to confront his own preconceptions.
How about?
Everything, relationships, sexuality, the very nature of reality. There's this one scene where Ben witnesses a water-sharing ceremony in the nest.
Okay, I vaguely remember that. What happens?
It involves a level of intimacy and nudity that makes Ben deeply uncomfortable. It's a reflection of his own societal conditioning.
Right.
Makes sense. But as he observes the genuine connection, the love between the participants, he starts to question those assumptions about what's normal, what's acceptable.
It's like Smith's way of being in the world challenges those very definitions.
And that's the power of Smith's influence. He doesn't force his beliefs on anyone. He lives by example, demonstrates the transformative power of grokking and thou art God.
So he creates a space where others feel safe enough to question, to explore.
Exactly. And this openness within the nest, it extends to practices that many would consider taboo in mainstream society.
Such as?
Free love, communal living.
Pretty radical stuff for the time period this book was written in.
Definitely. And Heinlein doesn't shy away from the potential pitfalls of these practices either. There are instances of jealousy, possessiveness, even abuse within the community.
So it's not all sunshine and roses, even in the nest.
Not at all. It's almost as if Heinlein is acknowledging that human nature is complex. Creating a utopia, even with the best intentions, is incredibly difficult.
But it's the striving that matters, right? The willingness to keep questioning, keep growing, keep reaching for something better.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Stranger in a Strange Land so powerful. It's not a blueprint for a perfect society. It's a mirror reflecting our own humanity with all its complexities.
And it challenges us to ask those tough questions about what it means to be human, what we're capable of if we open ourselves up to new possibilities.
Exactly.
It's like he's presenting this radical idea, this whole different way of looking at the world, but he's not sugarcoating it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where the character of Jubal Harshaw comes in. He adds another layer to this whole exploration.
Oh, yeah, Jubal Harshaw. He's the one who...
He becomes kind of a mentor to Smith. Brilliant guy, a writer, but also pretty cynical.
Right. Like he sees the potential in what Smith is trying to do, but also the reality of the situation.
Exactly. He's that voice of cautious optimism, maybe even a bit of skepticism.
Yeah.
That's important, though, because Smith is coming from this place of pure Martian idealism.
Which is beautiful and all, but Earth is a little more complicated than that.
To say the least. And Heinlein doesn't let us forget that. We see it in the way the government reacts to Smith, the media, even some religious groups.
They don't exactly welcome him with open arms, do they?
Not quite. There's suspicion, fear, even outright hostility in some cases.
Why is that? What are they so afraid of?
I think it's because Smith represents a fundamental challenge to their authority, to their worldview. They see grokking and thou art God as dangerous ideas.
Because it encourages people to think for themselves, to question the status quo.
Exactly. And that can be very threatening to those in power.
It's ironic, though, because Smith's message isn't about power or control. It's about love, understanding, connection, recognizing the inherent worth in everyone.
Exactly. Which makes the ending of the book all the more powerful and honestly kind of heartbreaking.
Because he doesn't exactly ride off into the sunset, does he?
No, he doesn't. Smith faces a tragic end. But even in death, his impact is undeniable. It's like a seed being planted.
Okay, I like that analogy. How so?
Well, the seed itself might disintegrate, but it leaves behind the potential for growth, for something new to emerge.
And that's what happens with Smith's teachings.
Exactly. His followers, those who have truly grokked his message, they carry on that legacy. They continue to live by those principles of love and understanding, even in the face of adversity.
It's a powerful reminder that real change often comes at a cost.
It does. But it also reminds us that the impact of one life, the power of an idea, can resonate long after that person is gone.
So ultimately, Stranger in a Strange Land is about more than just a Martian coming to Earth. It's about challenging our own perceptions of the world and ourselves.
Exactly. It's about asking those big questions about what it means to be human, about the power of empathy, about our potential for growth and transformation.
It's a lot to unpack, which is why we highly recommend diving into the book yourself if you haven't already.
You'll find yourself thinking about it long after you finish the last
And
page.
who knows, it might just inspire you to see the world and maybe even yourself in a whole new light.